you. Usually my students don't talk. It's been a while since I taught, as Sherry said, and so I really am excited about this opportunity to talk to you about Frankenstein. And the reason I have entitled this The Thin Lived is because we're going to look at what the novel is really about and about what Hollywood has done with the novel. Thank you to Helen Stevenson who provided us some good movie clips. And basically we're just, even though it's Halloween, we're really going to look at this in a literary sense. So I wasn't going to have this slide up initially, except I figured people wouldn't know what this was. But I was going to have this up. And has anybody ever heard of Shackleton's Antarctic adventure? Yes, Chris, I know you have. Yeah, you have. The Verde Valley Campus. So I had I'm taking a year-long working all year with a group that is Verde Valley leadership, and there's a lot of alumni in here. And during this very first retreat that we had, we were introduced with Shackleton. And Shackleton, the expedition to the South Pole, was about 100 years after Mary Wollstonecraft wrote Frankenstein. So a local journalist was presenting to us, and he was telling us the story. And the story of Shackleton is that he wanted to find a direct route via the South Pole, get around the South Pole. Well, he got stuck in the floes. Icebergs, ice floes, stuck. The ship got stuck. That's an actual picture of it. They had a photographer on board 100 years ago. And the journalist said, and this ship actually ended up being crushed by the ice floes, and the mission became getting the 30 people on board out alive, which did happen, but did take 2 years. The journalist said, "Can you imagine fiction even being as strange as that?" And I went, yeah. 100 years before that, Mary Wollstonecraft wrote Frankenstein, which starts with a ship that is stuck in the ice floes in the North Pole. Shackleton was South Pole, and the novel begins its first setting in the North Pole. So it's really a case of fact following fiction instead of the other way around as it usually is. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the inception of the writing of the novel, and this might be a review for a lot of you, but we had Byron, Percy Shelley, and Mary Wollstonecraft Jr., by the way, because Mary Wollstonecraft Sr. was a great feminist writer. It was her mother who died. She didn't die in childbirth. She died of milk fever about 2 weeks after Mary Jr. was born. The beginning of sort of a tragic life for our author today. So they're sitting around a campfire, and they've gotten there because Percy Shelley is very much in love with Mary Jr., but he's already married. And so they go off and to Switzerland, and they decide that they're going to just run away together. But the weather was really bad. Byron's a friend. They're sitting around a campfire, and they challenge each other to write a ghost story. Now, at this time, Mary Wollstonecraft was 19 years old. So she was 19 years old when it was published. So imagine that. It's a great novel. How many people, just out of curiosity, have ever read the novel or poem? So tradition holds that they challenge each other. Everybody goes to sleep, and Mary Wollstonecraft has a dream of a ghost story. And the actual dream and the actual beginning drafts are what takes place begins in chapter 5 of the novel. Okay, the actual story that she came up with. Tradition holds that Byron was so terrified of her first telling around the campfire that he ran away in fear. So, a little bit about Mary Wollstonecraft herself, and I'm going to get into a bit of a timeline of her life before Percy Shelley and then afterwards. But it's very important that you realize this quote. She wrote the novel very young, published it very young, and then in 1831, another edition is coming out, a subsequent printing. And I know I'm not supposed to read PowerPoints, but I'm going to read this one because it's so sad. And now, she writes, once again, I bid my hideous progeny go forth and prosper. I have affection for it was the offspring of happy days, when death and grief were but words, and found no true echo in my heart. And I have that memorized. So, just a little bit about her life. And she was born in 1997. 17. Thank you for the correction. 1797. So 10 days later, her mother died of milk fever, milk penicillin, and she's lived back 200 years, gets a breast infection, dies. In 1812, she meets Percy. In 1840, they moved to France to evade his wife. They have their first daughter born in 1815, premature child, and she dies within a month. In 1816, Byron suggests writing the ghost stories around the campfire. And also in 1860, Percy's wife commits suicide, and they were married 2 weeks later. So I always say, should she, if you go up to anybody, librarians, where are you, right here, who wrote Frankenstein, you're going to say Shelley. Okay. But she wasn't Shelley when she wrote it. And very quickly after they got married, it was published. But it does tend to get that name, which is just really funny since her mother was such a feminist. Okay, so they marry. So then she becomes Shelley, and then the actual book, that's why it's in italics, we're talking about Frankenstein all the time. So she started writing it in 1815, and that's the first iteration. 1817, second child is born. A year later, that child dies. And then, same year, third child born. Frankenstein was published 200 years later. This is the 200th anniversary, right? And then William died. So, all of this grief happened before she was 22 years old. Then son Percy Jr. is born, and he is the only of her children to survive into adulthood. Meantime, 2 years after Frankenstein is published, Percy publishes a play called Prometheus Unbound. We're going to talk about Prometheus here in a second. Subtitled Prometheus Unbound. Never had anywhere near the fame that Mary did. And then by 1822, he drowns. Okay. She, after he died, tried to publish and advance his work to success, but it just never happened. Okay, so Greek mythology expert in the room. You guys know the story of Prometheus? Good, yay! So Prometheus, a sort of sub-god in Greek mythology, pissed off Zeus. He gave fire to humans, and that made Zeus really, really mad. So what does he do in order to punish Prometheus? He chains him to a rock. Prometheus bound, right? And every night, an eagle comes and eats Prometheus's liver. Now, what do we know, medical people, what do we know about livers? They do regenerate, exactly. And so every night after the eagle has eaten out Prometheus's liver, it regenerates, only for the eagle to come back. So, moral of the story, don't sell fire plants, I guess. So, with all this background, Mary writes. Okay, so I'm going to show you, and it's going to work. So So can't you just see her sitting at her desk in her room, writing all night? Actually, on July 24th, 1816, a year and a half before it was published, she, her calendar of events to do, she has written Write My Stories. Potential themes. So when I taught this novel in British Lit, I would have them write their final essay on potential themes, to choose one of the potential themes and then write their essay on it. Obviously, it's a tale of revenge. If you know the story, the creature is very angry at what he has become, blames it on the creator, his creator, Dr. Frankenstein, and there's a lot of murder and revenge that goes on because of that. And then at some point, it shifts to where Dr. Frankenstein is pushing his revenge on the creature. Also, the consequences of playing God, creating something that the creator is supposed to create, knowledge of good and evil. The monster goes through that too. It has a really good side to that. The invasion of technology. Whew. Okay. TQ stands for trivia question number 1. On technology. 3 major revolutions were happening in Mary Wollstonecraft's lifetime. What are they? Industrial. Oh, you guys went to industrial first. You're brilliant. Yes. Also, the American Revolution and the French Revolution were all happening. But if any of you have ever taken, Holly, did you take my 102? The consequences of the Industrial Revolution and what it caused, what happened in London, various towns. It was big. Okay. Also, treatment of the poor and uneducated. Incidentally, Mary Wollstonecraft Sr. wrote that she wrote the Vindication of the Rights of Women, and she wrote that the only thing that can save women in our Western culture is education. So, but then, conversely, the dangers of too much knowledge, because of course Dr. Frankenstein was a genius. Okay, we're going to do it again. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a recap of the murder victims. So William Frankenstein is Victor's youngest brother. Justine Maurice, she's sort of seen as the martyr in this story. She's the family's housekeeper, and the monster frames her for the murder, puts a locket in her pocket, that William's locket in her pocket, which then they would convict her and she is hanged. Henry Clerval is Victor's very best friend. He is also murdered. And Elizabeth Frankenstein, who is married to Dr. Frankenstein, who is killed on that kind of, as an act of revenge, because why? Because Frankenstein wouldn't make the bride for the picture. Okay. So, Hollywood, black lips. Okay, comparison and contrast between the novel and what Hollywood did with the novel. And incidentally, I'll tell you that. Okay, so just as I was working on this, I was thinking about television renditions of Frankenstein. So we have the Munsters. Remember the Munsters? Way too young. And then also the Addams Family. Remember? Okay, which came first? Munsters.
Addams Family.
They were released the same week.
Oh.
Okay, so creation of the bride. So the creature by this point has learned language, is very well read, and super educated by spying on a family for a season. And because he's committed almost all of these murders at this point, he goes to Dr. Frankenstein and he says, I want you to make a companion for me. If you make a companion for me, then I will cease this destruction of your family. And so Frankenstein, anybody know, Frankenstein starts digging up the bodies again and putting together a bride for Frankenstein, but he said, I can't do this. I just can't do this to the world. And so tears up the bride, and then what happens to the bride in the novel gets destroyed, and then the act of revenge is to kill Frankenstein's bride, strangle her mother. He promised him he was going to do that too. And Hollywood does some really good scenes with the strangulation of Mrs. Frankenstein. Okay, electricity and lightning are present in both Hollywood's renditions and in the novel. The size, oversized creature, definitely. There's no Igor in the novel, and there's no neck bolts anywhere. Okay. So, all right, one more. We're going to make it work. Just wanted to talk about creating the classic. Got it, good. Obviously, she's a gifted writer, even at 19. She writes the story. Many iterations later, she has the story begin with letters written from the stuck ship, and she frames it very well because the novel ends with the letters as well. So, did she ever take a creative writing class? I doubt it. She came from very literary parents, but this is actually the hallmark of her career. But so I came across creating the classic in a horror fiction and monster story. And so I just wanted to ask you, knowing what you know now about the novel or what you've known in studying it, introduce fear very early. Okay. The first image that we have of the monster is by the captain of the ship that's stuck in the ice floes. An oversized creature, terrified. Then very shortly after that, Frankenstein appears near death in his pursuit of the creature. So fear is introduced very early. Yeah, she did that. Used delay tactics to elevate the tension and go into Frankenstein's entire education of himself about how he's going to go about creating this creature, this monster. Make the monster appear to be unstoppable. That's exactly what happens. We have, 4 murders, we have threats of additional, just appears to be unstoppable. That he is going to just continue on this rampage. He's furious at his creator for causing him to be so ugly and frightening that he has no place in society at all. So that would be good evidence for revenge. Turn up the heat with plot twists, which she does. She starts bringing in other people, other characters to be killed or to rescue him. One of the best plot twists, I think, is when he is observing the family. What's the name of the family? He's in a little hovel and he spies on this family. And the patriarch of the family is blind. So he loves watching them, he loves their interactions, he wants that for himself. And as a reward for people go in and steal food, but sometimes he brings food out, he chops up firewood, feeds it for them, and they're like, who is this benefactor that we have? And he feels so safe with them that while everybody that is sighted is away in town, he goes and has a conversation with the patriarch who's blind and in a wheelchair, and has this conversation with him. They become friends. Of course, the thief becomes home and sees this scream, and he has to run away, and that's the beginning of his rejection from society. But it was definitely a twist in the plot. Ultimately, our protagonist, who is Dr. Frankenstein, rises to the extreme challenge to stop the monster. He does stop the bride production, and then decides that the only way out of this would be to destroy the monster. And he does rise to that, although we don't see him actually catch it. Make the setting crackle with tension. I thought that was really funny because there's lightning crackling all the way, but certainly a lot of tension, enough to make Byron run from the fight. And then catharsis in the ending. So in the end, Frankenstein is stuck on this ship and dictating what had happened to him. The ship's captain is listening and recording and sending it out to his sister, what has happened. So he's all excited because he thinks he has a friend. Oh, so I had Dr. Frankenstein. Then he hears the horrible story, and it's something else. And of course, Dr. Frankenstein, spoiler, dies on the ship, but not before bequeathing his mission to the captain of the ship. Go after him, destroy him. There is a moment, though, where the monster says, I shouldn't be existing. I want to get away from society. I want to stop this brutality that I've done, even though he blames it on it. So there is a little bit of catharsis there for that. So English people, we have two kinds of characters. We have flat or static characters, and we have round and dynamic characters. That has nothing to do with their round and dynamic personality, but it's how they evolve during the story. So we can say, let's look at the creature, the monster. Sometimes he's called the creature and sometimes he's called the monster. It would be interesting to write a dissertation on which she uses in each setting. It would be very interesting. And all of you should get your PhDs and write your dissertation on Frankenstein. Somebody has to go first, though. You can't repeat those. All right, so the creature. Does he change during the course of the novel? Yeah, big time. He changes. So we call that a round character, a dynamic character. How about Dr. Frankenstein? Does he change during the course of the novel, or does he stay the same all the way through? Huh? He does change. He certainly regrets what he has done. That makes sense. The other characters in the novel are more static. Elizabeth, who becomes Frankenstein's wife. She's good through the whole thing. Justine is good through the whole thing. Doesn't do any change. But, those are the kind of decisions that a writer has to think about as they go forth and create. So that's what I'm challenging you guys to go forth and create, get to writing. So super cool. That's it. Thank you.